Captain Sarah Mitchell crouched behind the fallen tree, her rifle steady against the bark. Through her scope, she watched the alien craft hover silently above the forest clearing. The ship was beautiful in an unsettling way, all smooth curves and pulsing blue lights that seemed to breathe like a living thing. "Contact in 3 minutes," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez through her earpiece. "International team is in position." Sarah nodded, though he couldn't see her. The Joint Task Force had been tracking these visitors for 2 weeks. The aliens had landed in remote locations across the globe, always in wilderness areas, always seemingly peaceful. But Sarah's instincts told her something different. 20 years of military experience had taught her to read patterns. And these beings were following the oldest pattern in the universe. They were hunting. The alien that emerged from the craft stood nearly 8 feet tall, its pale blue skin shimmering in the dappled sunlight. It had 4 arms, each ending in delicate fingers that moved with precise control. Its head was elongated, with large black eyes that swept the forest methodically. Behind it came 2 smaller aliens, carrying devices that hummed with energy. Sarah spoke softly into her radio. "Watcher 1 to all stations. 3 targets confirmed. Primary is scanning for something specific." "Copy that, Watcher 1, came the reply from Colonel Chun, the Chinese liaison officer positioned on the eastern ridge. "Their equipment is definitely some kind of sensor array." From the south, Lieutenant Murphy, the Irish Ranger, added his observation. "Movement patterns are wrong for scientists. They're spreading out in a hunting formation." Sarah smiled grimly. The international community had chosen this team carefully. Each member was a specialist in tracking and survival, drawn from elite units around the world. But as the American team leader, Sarah brought something extra to the table. She'd grown up hunting deer with her grandfather in Montana, spent her teenage years learning to think like prey and predator both. The military had refined those instincts into something deadlier. The tall alien raised one of its devices, and a pulse of green light swept across the trees. Wherever the light touched, small animals froze. Birds fell from branches. Squirrels collapsed mid-leap. The light continued its sweep, methodical and thorough. "Stunner," Sarah breathed. "They're not here to study. They're here to collect." The realization hit her like a physical blow. These aliens weren't peaceful explorers. They were hunters, and Earth was their hunting ground. The remote locations, the careful scanning, the stunning devices, it all made perfect sense. They were harvesting Earth's wildlife, probably for sport or trophies, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed humans were just another type of prey animal. Sarah's grandfather had taught her that the most dangerous moment in any hunt came when you realized you weren't the hunter anymore. These aliens were about to learn that lesson. "All stations, this is Watcher 1, Pattern Alpha, repeat, Pattern Alpha." The response was immediate. Across the forest, 6 elite soldiers began moving with the precision of a machine. The British SAS operative, Thompson, started his approach from the north. The German KSK soldier, Weber, closed in from the west. The Japanese Special Forces member, Tanaka, moved like a shadow through the eastern undergrowth, but Sarah's approach was different. While her international colleagues moved with military precision, Sarah activated something deeper. She let her breathing slow, her heartbeat quiet. Her mind settle into the patient calm her grandfather had called becoming the forest. The aliens continued their sweep, stunning small animals and collecting them in cylindrical containers. They worked efficiently, but their attention was focused downward on the creatures they were harvesting. They weren't watching for larger threats. Sarah reached her position 30 meters from the aliens and settled into a perfect hide. Through her scope, she could see the intricate patterns on their skin, the complex technology they carried, the casual confidence in their movements. They were apex predators on their own world, she realized. They'd probably never encountered serious resistance that was about to change. "Watcher 1 to command," she whispered into her radio. "Request permission to demonstrate human hunting capabilities." General Harrison's voice came back immediately. "Negative, Watcher 1, observe only. Do not engage." Sarah bit back her frustration. She understood the caution. But every instinct she possessed was screaming that these beings needed to understand what they were dealing with. They needed to learn that humans weren't prey. The tall alien moved closer to her position, its scanning device sweeping back and forth. The green pulse washed over her hiding spot, and Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation. But unlike the small animals, she didn't freeze. Her grandfather had taught her to resist, to push through discomfort and disorientation. The military had turned that resistance into an art form. The alien paused, its device beeping in confusion. It swept the area again, then tilted its head in a gesture that was almost human in its puzzlement. Sarah smiled. The first lesson was already being taught. Human nervous systems were more complex than these. Hunters expected, the alien called to its companions in a series of musical tones. They gathered around the scanning device, examining its readouts with growing concern. One of the smaller aliens adjusted several controls and tried another sweep. Again, the pulse washed over Sarah's position. Again, she remained unaffected. Now they were truly confused. Sarah could see it in their body language, the way they moved with less certainty. Their hunt wasn't going according to plan. She keyed her radio. All stations, they're definitely using some kind of neural disruptor. Humans appear to be resistant. Confirmed, came Tanaka's voice. I've been hit by 3 pulses. No effect beyond mild nausea. Weber added his report. Same here. Whatever this technology is designed for, it's not built for human physiology. The aliens were now scanning frantically, their devices beeping with increasing urgency. The tall one gestured toward the forest, and Sarah caught enough of its meaning to understand. It knew something was out here, something that shouldn't be able to resist their technology. That's when Sarah made her decision. Orders were orders, but sometimes a soldier had to make a judgment call. These hunters needed to understand what they were dealing with before they moved on to populated areas. She stood up slowly, her rifle lowered but ready, and stepped into the clearing. The effect was immediate and dramatic. All 3 aliens spun toward her, their weapons rising with speed that would have been impressive against any other species. But Sarah had been expecting that reaction. She'd already calculated their response time, their weapon angles, their likely retreat paths. Easy there, she said calmly, her voice carrying the authority of 20 years commanding soldiers in combat zones. No need for this to get ugly. The tall alien spoke, its voice a harmony of musical tones that somehow resolved into English words. Impossible. The neural cascade should have rendered you unconscious. Sorry to disappoint, Sarah replied. But humans are a little tougher than your average prey animal. The alien's large eyes widened. Prey animal? You are sentient? Very much so. And we've been watching you for quite a while now. As if to prove her point, the other members of her team stepped into view from 6 different directions. Each soldier appeared from concealment that had been invisible moments before, their positions forming a perfect tactical circle around the aliens. The aliens raised their weapons, but stopped when they realized they were surrounded by beings who had somehow evaded their most sophisticated scanning equipment. This is impossible, the tall alien said. Our technology is flawless. We have hunted across 17 worlds. No species has ever been human, Sarah interrupted. See, you made a fundamental error in your assumptions. You thought we were just another animal to be harvested. But we're not prey. We're hunters. Just like you. The alien looked around at the ring of soldiers, its confidence visibly shaking. But your technology is primitive. Your weapons are chemical projectiles. How did you... Because hunting isn't about having the best toys, Sarah explained patiently. It's about understanding your prey, reading the environment, and knowing when to strike. Skills that don't require fancy equipment. Thompson, the British soldier, spoke up. 26 minutes you've been here. 26 minutes we've been watching you. You never once looked up into the trees, never checked your flanks, never considered that something might be hunting you. The tall alien's skin had shifted from pale blue to a sickly green color. You were hunting us? We were learning about you, Sarah corrected. Understanding your patterns, your capabilities, your weaknesses. Basic hunter behavior. The fact that you never noticed us doing it tells us everything we need to know about your hunting methods. Colonel Chun stepped forward slightly. You rely too heavily on your technology. It makes you overconfident, careless. The alien looked at the Chinese officer, then back at Sarah. What do you want from us? Understanding, Sarah replied. We need to know if you're a threat to our people. And you need to understand what you're dealing with here on Earth. We are apex predators, the alien said, but there was less certainty in its voice now. We have hunted successfully across 17 worlds, Sarah finished. Yes, you mentioned that. But let me ask you something. The alien commander, who had introduced himself as ZXHI, stood in the makeshift briefing area that had been set up in the forest clearing. His pale blue skin had returned to its normal color, but Sarah could see the tension in his forearms and the way his large black eyes constantly swept the perimeter. Even surrounded by what he now understood were professional killers, he was still trying to read the situation like a hunter. Smart, Sarah thought. But not smart enough. General Harrison had arrived by helicopter an hour ago, along with representatives from NATO, the UN, and various national defense agencies. The alien ships maintained their distance, hovering at exactly 2 kilometers, close enough to extract their people quickly, far enough to avoid any immediate threat, or so they thought. Your species claims to be hunters, ZXHI said, his voice carrying that strange musical quality that somehow translated into perfect English. But we have studied your military conflicts through your own transmissions. You fight each other constantly. True predators do not waste energy on internal conflict. Sarah exchanged a glance with General Harrison. They'd expected this kind of reasoning from a species that had probably achieved unity through conquest rather than cooperation. You're making the same mistake you made when you landed, Sarah replied calmly. You're applying your logic to our behavior. But human hunting evolved differently than yours. She gestured to the international team that was still maintaining overwatch positions around the clearing. Every one of these soldiers comes from a different nation, different military tradition, different hunting culture. 6 months ago, some of their countries were pointing weapons at each other. But when faced with an external threat, we worked together perfectly. ZXHI's head tilted in confusion. How is this possible? Competition between apex predators should be constant? Sarah finished. Maybe on your world. But humans figured out something your species apparently never did. The best way to stay at the top of the food chain isn't to eliminate your competition. It's to make your competition better. She nodded to Colonel Chun, who stepped forward. Colonel, would you mind explaining how your unit trains? Chun smiled slightly. Certainly. The Chinese People's Liberation Army Special Operations Forces train regularly with American Navy SEALs, British SAS, and Russian Spetsnaz units. We share techniques, compete in joint exercises, and learn from each other's methods. Weber. The German KSK soldier added, every year, elite units from dozens of nations gather for joint training exercises. We test our skills against each other, not to establish dominance, but to push each other to become deadlier. ZXHI looked genuinely confused. But why would you make your potential enemies stronger? Because, Sarah said patiently, when you're truly confident in your abilities, competition makes you better. And when all of humanity is better, we're all safer from threats like alien hunters. The alien commander's skin shifted to a slightly darker blue, which Sarah was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of a frown. You speak of threats, but we are the superior force here. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. Our ships could destroy your cities from orbit. General Harrison spoke for the first time since arriving. Could they? It was a simple question, asked in a conversational tone, but something in the general's voice made ZXHI step back slightly. Harrison keyed his radio. Overwatch, this is Harrison. Illuminate targets. What happened next would have been invisible to most species, but Sarah knew the alien sensors were sophisticated enough to detect it. Across the forest, 12 different positions lit up with the distinctive signatures of laser targeting systems. not visible light infrared, and thermal lasers that painted every one of the alien ships with targeting coordinates. HFY spun around, his device beeping frantically as it detected the targeting signatures. Impossible. We would have detected any missile systems in this area. You're still thinking like a prey species, Sarah said. You're looking for big, obvious threats. But humans learned a long time ago that the deadliest weapons are the ones you never see coming. She nodded toward the tree line. Sergeant Rodriguez, would you please show our guest what American innovation looks like? From a position that appeared to be nothing more than a fallen log, a section of forest floor slid away to reveal a concealed missile launcher. The system rose silently, its multiple warheads already locked onto the alien ships. Then another launcher emerged from what had looked like a boulder, then another from beneath a pile of brush. Within 30 seconds, 16 concealed missile systems had revealed themselves, all targeted on the supposedly safe alien ships. HFY's device was now beeping continuously, its screen showing threat indicators from every direction. When did you? How did you? While you were scanning for animals to hunt, Sarah explained, we were preparing to hunt you. Those systems were positioned and camouflaged within hours of your first appearance on our radar. Each one is capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. Thompson stepped forward. The British contribution includes electronic warfare systems that have been monitoring your ship communications for the past week. We've mapped your command frequencies, identified your ship hierarchy, and developed countermeasures for your defensive systems. Tanaka added quietly, Japanese self-defense force satellites have been tracking your ship's orbital mechanics. We know their fuel consumption rates, their heat signatures, and their maximum acceleration capabilities. Murphy pointed toward the horizon. Irish Army Rangers have spotters positioned on every high point within 50 kilometers. Your ships can't move without us knowing about it. HFY looked around at the humans surrounding him, his confidence visibly cracking. But this coordination would require perfect communication between military units from different nations. The complexity alone. Welcome to human hunting, General Harrison said with a cold smile. We don't just track our prey. We share information in real time, coordinate across vast distances, and adapt our tactics based on observed behavior. Your species hunts with superior technology. Humans hunt with superior intelligence. Sarah watched as HFY processed this information. She could see him recalculating everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. It was the same look she'd seen on the faces of enemy commanders during her deployments, the moment when they realized they'd underestimated American military capabilities. Your technology is still primitive, HFY said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Kinetic weapons, chemical explosives. Our ships have energy shields that can deflect. Can they deflect this? Sarah asked. She gestured toward the forest canopy, where a shape that had been invisible moments before suddenly materialized. The stealth aircraft descended silently, its angular surfaces designed to scatter radar and visual detection systems. But it wasn't the plane itself that made HFY step back in alarm. It was the weapon slung beneath its belly. Experimental electromagnetic pulse generator, General Harrison explained casually. Designed specifically for disabling advanced electronics. We've been studying your ship emissions for 2 weeks. This weapon is tuned to exactly the frequencies your shields use. HFY's device beeped urgently, and he spoke rapidly into his communicator. Sarah caught enough of the musical tones to understand that he was warning his ships about the new threat. They're moving to higher orbit, Sarah observed, watching her tactical display. Smart, but not smart enough. She nodded to her radio operator, who had been monitoring satellite communications. Show them the rest. On cue, streaks of light appeared in the sky as 3 different orbital weapons platforms adjusted their positions. The lights were barely visible, but sophisticated sensors would clearly detect the movement. Space-based kinetic bombardment systems, Harrison explained. Also known as rods from God, tungsten projectiles that can be dropped from orbit with the accuracy of a rifle shot and the impact force of a nuclear weapon. Without the radiation, of course. Zexai stared up at the sky, his skin now a pale gray color. You have weaponized your orbital space? Humans weaponize everything, Sarah said simply. It's what makes us effective hunters. We don't just use tools, we turn everything around us into a potential weapon. She gestured toward the forest around them. This entire area has been turned into a kill zone. The trees provide concealment for our forces. The terrain channels movement into predetermined firing lanes. Even the wildlife has been equipped with monitoring devices that track movement and relay information to our command systems. Zexai looked down at a squirrel that was sitting near his feet. The small animal looked perfectly normal, but now he was clearly wondering what kind of surveillance technology it might be carrying. But the most important thing you need to understand, Sarah continued, is that everything you've seen so far represents standard human military capability. Basic defensive measures that any developed nation could deploy. The alien commander looked at her with something approaching fear. Standard? General Harrison smiled. You wanted to know what makes American forces different from other human military units. Captain Mitchell, would you like to explain? Sarah felt a familiar surge of professional pride. This was the moment she'd been building toward, the chance to demonstrate why American military. 3 months later, Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the deck of the USS Ford, watching the tactical displays that showed incoming alien signatures. This time, it wasn't a small hunting party with 3 ships. This time, the aliens had come in force. Contact report, Admiral Rodriguez called from the bridge. 57 ships, various sizes. Largest one is reading as a dreadnought class, approximately 3 kilometers long. Sarah checked her equipment one final time. The past 3 months had been spent in intensive preparation, analyzing every scrap of data collected from the first contact. The aliens had clearly been busy too, because intelligence suggested they'd spent the time gathering allies and planning what appeared to be a full-scale invasion. Ma'am, reported Lieutenant Commander Williams, the Ford's tactical officer. Lead ship is transmitting. Same musical language pattern we encountered before. Put it through, Admiral Rodriguez ordered. The bridge speakers crackled, and then Zexai's familiar voice filled the air. But this time there was no confusion or fear in his tone. This time he sounded confident. Captain Mitchell, I know you are listening. My fleet has studied your capabilities extensively. We have prepared countermeasures for your weapons, your tactics, your electronic warfare systems. Today we will demonstrate that humans are not the apex predators you believe yourselves to be. Sarah keyed the communication system. Hello, Zexai. I was wondering when you'd be back. Brought some friends this time, I see. 57 ships, Zexai replied. Each one equipped with the finest weapons and defensive systems our alliance possesses. We represent 12 different species, all of whom have agreed that your world requires ... management. Admiral Rodriguez gestured to Sarah, giving her permission to continue the conversation. As the senior officer who'd made first contact, she'd been designated as the primary liaison for this encounter. Management? Sarah asked. That's an interesting way to put it. What exactly did you have in mind? Your species will be relocated to designated regions where you can be properly supervised. Your weapons will be confiscated. Your military forces will be disbanded. In exchange, we will provide advanced technology and protection from other galactic threats. Sarah looked around the bridge at the American officers and sailors, who were calmly preparing for what appeared to be an impossible fight. 57 alien ships against the combined naval forces of a single carrier battle group. The math should have been terrifying. Instead, everyone seemed almost relaxed. That's a generous offer, Sarah said. But I'm afraid we'll have to decline. You see, Americans don't really do the whole surrender and be managed thing very well. Then you choose death? Zexai replied. We are prepared for your primitive missiles, your kinetic weapons, your electromagnetic pulses. Our shields have been upgraded. Our armor has been strengthened. Today you will learn what it means to face true apex predators. Sarah smiled as she looked at the tactical displays. The alien fleet was arranged in a classic battle formation, their most powerful ships at the center, smaller vessels screening the flanks. It was textbook space warfare, the kind of formation that would be effective against any conventional military force. Unfortunately for them, they weren't facing a conventional military force. They were facing Americans, and Americans had a long tradition of winning impossible fights through superior tactics and innovative thinking. "Admiral," Sarah said formally, requesting permission to demonstrate why the United States Navy is considered the finest fighting force in human history. Rodriguez nodded. "Permission granted, Captain." "Show them how Americans hunt?" Sarah keyed her communicator, switching to the encrypted tactical frequency that connected her to military commanders around the globe. "All stations, this is Watcher 1, execute Operation Apex Hunter." What happened next was the result of 3 months of planning, preparation, and technological innovation that had pushed American military capabilities into entirely new territory. The alien fleet had expected to face the same weapons and tactics they'd encountered during first contact. They'd made a fatal error in assuming that Americans would use the same approach. "Twice, Ghost Rider Squadron. You are cleared for Phase 1, Sarah transmitted, high above the atmosphere. 12 aircraft that didn't officially exist began their descent toward the alien fleet. The planes were invisible to conventional sensors, their stealth technology so advanced that they barely registered on American radar systems, much less alien ones, but stealth was just the beginning. Each aircraft carried weapons that had been developed specifically for this mission, using alien technology captured during the first encounter and reverse-engineered by American scientists working around the clock. "Contact," reported Ghost Rider Lead. "Alien shields are active, but our new penetrator warheads are configured to their exact frequency." Beginning attack run. The first the aliens knew of the attack was when their flagship shields simply vanished. Not overloaded, not destroyed, simply turned off as American-designed viruses infiltrated their defensive systems and shut them down from the inside. Then the real weapons hit. "Direct hit on target Alpha?" Ghost Rider Lid reported calmly. "Dreadnought's primary weapon systems are offline. Secondary explosions detected." Through the bridge windows, Sarah could see the largest alien ship listing to one side, its smooth hull cracked in venting atmosphere. In less than 30 seconds, the most powerful vessel in the alien fleet had been reduced to a crippled wreck. "Impossible," Zexhaya's voice crackled through the speakers. "Our shields were upgraded," Sarah finished. "Yes, we heard. The problem is, you upgraded them based on our old technology. You didn't account for the fact that we've been studying your systems for 3 months." On the tactical display, more alien ships were going dark as the stealth aircraft continued their attack run. But that was just the opening move. "Phase 2, Sarah announced. Submarine attack." The aliens had positioned their fleet above Earth's oceans, thinking that the planet's surface would provide no threat to ships in orbit. It was a reasonable assumption for any species that hadn't encountered American naval capabilities. From the depths of the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans, ballistic missile submarines began launching their payloads. But these weren't nuclear warheads, they were kinetic penetrators designed to reach orbital targets with precision that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. "Multiple launches detected," reported the Ford's weapons officer. "Ohio-class submarines are firing in sequence. Impact in 60 seconds. The alien fleet tried to maneuver, but they were operating in 3-dimensional space according to predictable physics. American targeting computers had calculated every possible evasion pattern, and the missiles adjusted their trajectories accordingly. The impacts came like thunderbolts from below, each kinetic penetrator hitting with the force of a small nuclear weapon. Ships that had been designed to withstand energy, weapons, and conventional explosives simply disintegrated under the focused impact of tungsten rods, traveling at orbital velocity. 12 ships destroyed, Williams reported. 15 more showing critical damage. Through the communication system, Sarah could hear panicked musical tones as alien commanders tried to coordinate a response to attacks coming from directions they'd never considered. Phase 3, she announced. Space superiority? This was the moment Sarah had been most looking forward to. For decades, American military planners had theorized about space-based warfare. Today, those theories became reality. From orbital positions that the aliens had never detected, American space fighters began their attack. The spacecraft were small, fast, and designed specifically for zero-gravity combat. Each one was piloted by test pilots who had trained for years in conditions that pushed human physiology to its absolute limits. "Raptor Squadron engaging," came the voice of Major Chun, the flight leader. Alien interceptors are moving to engage, but they're designed for atmospheric flight. They're clumsy and zero-G. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in human history, but it followed principles that American military doctrine had established centuries earlier. Superior training, superior tactics, and superior situational awareness overcame technological advantages. "Splash 4 alien fighters," Chun reported. "They're learning, but not fast enough." Beginning strafing runs on the capital ships. Sarah watched the tactical display as American space fighters danced between alien defensive fire, their pilots using three-dimensional maneuvers that the enemy couldn't predict or counter. It was air combat doctrine applied to space warfare, and the results were devastating. "Phase 4, she announced. Orbital bombardment. From platforms that had been disguised as communications satellites, American forces began dropping kinetic bombardment packages onto the alien fleet. The rods from God that had been demonstrated during first contact were just the beginning. American engineers had developed an entire arsenal of orbital weapons, each designed for specific tactical situations. Alien ships that had survived the submarine-launched missiles and the space fighter attacks found themselves under bombardment from directly above. Ships that tried to climb to higher orbits were met by more kinetic penetrators coming from even higher orbital positions. 28 ships down, Williams reported. Remaining vessels are attempting to retreat. Sarah opened.